Welcome to the Cool Fireman Podcast, a virtual firehouse kitchen table with Matt, Adam, Brian, Doug, and Freddy, where they discuss everything that matters in today's fire service. Now let's get to the show.
We're starting this podcast.
Let's not put,
lovely tonight.
let's not put the part in there that
we're on a good roll here.
Cup, so I just made a bullshit video. and now I just
we're already rolling, baby.
We're signed, sealed, and delivered.
I put a meme up where it has this dad peanut look at his kid and said, "I'll be back in a jiff," and then it shows the kid crying with the can of peanut butter and it says "jiff" on it. Matt finds that funny.
Dude, I love peanut butter.
I do too. Adam, did you get that, Adam? Do I need to draw a picture? Okay. You just
reminds me of that other great video that's going around. This is your reminder. We need peanut butter. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
All right.
I need to know immediately.
So this podcast has not started yet because I'm going to say some.
No, it started.
We started. Okay. No regrets. No regrets.
No, that is my credo. That's my credo. No regrets.
No regrets.
Oh,
it started.
Adam shut his mouth really fast.
He went, whoop. Not going there, baby. Hey, welcome to the Cool Fireman Podcast, brought to you by Unky Seasonings and the Burn Box. Awesome monthly stuff comes in that box, though. We love everything that comes in that box. And speaking of, we've already shown some swag, the pictures, stuff, and in
this
fact,
cool
November's
picture
box
or this cool sticker I have on this awesome cup that I have.
Yeah.
Way to bounce back there, Freddy.
And for all the people that aren't watching this, it's a nice sticker of the Cool Fireman Podcast on Freddy's fake Stanley.
Awesome things like nightstick flashlights, hats, shirts, wedges, elevator keys, all kinds of cool stuff over the last couple of months. Since we have been subscribers, we have been blessed to get in our subscription box. You'll want to snag that as well. With the holidays coming up, this is something you want to put on your list.
I can't hear that, Unky. Will you turn it up?
Your family to get you for your holiday season. So make sure you go and subscribe to our channel so that way you will be able to find out what is in the burn boxes. And shout out to Unky Seasoning as well, one of our faithful sponsors as well, and one of our co-hosts as well. So
jeez, that was a lot of as wells.
I know, as well. A lot of as well. I had to get all the housekeeping out of the way right there on the house floor.
Right? Well, where thou as well
as. Whereas.
Hey, before we start our talk tonight, I got two separate things. One, I told you guys via text, but I thought it would be kind of fun to share it on the podcast.
No, I was letting them know this is number one.
What do you got, Fred?
This is number one.
Oh, this is the first. This is 2 words. First word.
1 of 2.
So I was at the firehouse the other day, and a retired guy stops by the firehouse, and he comes up to me, and we give each other a big hug. I freaking love this guy. I love this guy. Big shout outs to Kurt, and he listens to our podcast very minimally, but self-admittedly, like he's like, "Hey, listen, do you guys ever talk about anything on your podcast?"
This podcast is like Seinfeld,
and I go, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, I listened to like a few of them for like the first 10 minutes, and I just didn't, have a lot of time to listen to the rest. But you guys didn't talk about anything. And then before I could even say anything, one of the other firemen came to my rescue without even me saying anything and said, "It's supposed to be like a virtual coffee table, Kurt." And he paused, and he's like, "Oh, that makes a heck of a lot of sense." He goes, "Well, then carry on. I'll listen to the next one."
So listen to the intro, buddy.
Our AI voice says it.
That's the point.
Yeah,
exactly. Take note.
Yeah, our AI voice named Jason says it. Okay.
Yeah.
So shout out to Kurt, and then secondly, what was the other thing? Oh, I got a text message. This is second word. I got a text message from Greg, and so we had Greg on the podcast, and he talked about mental health and his rad consulting, and so a couple chiefs that run a podcast for fire engineering caught wind that he was on the Cool Fireman Podcast. they listened to our episode and they talked to Greg, which one of them is friends of Greg. So I'm not going to it's not like totally random. Touts, but they actually called Greg and they said, hey, we want you to be on a mental health, awareness podcast for fire engineering. And so he did it this morning. That's why I texted you guys. He was live, and then Brian obviously didn't understand that.
Yeah, I knew he was live, but I was trying to watch it, and I couldn't. I was going to turn it on while I was doing some stuff.
Yeah, I was on Facebook. It was really good. One of the guys was a retired chief from Chicago Fire. He'd been there for like 35, 40 years, and he was also a mental health awareness clinician of some sort. Dan DeGrace, and the other guy was a retired chief from the Sonoma County area in Washington. Anyways, and so that's pretty cool. So we talk about wanting to touch people all over the world with this podcast, and this is what we're doing: is touching people. What, right? Like what Greg said. If you reach out to one person, right? If you reach one person, they touch 7 others.
Yes. FBI has entered the chat.
It's a good thing. So,
well, but
that's why I was laughing. It's not a laughing matter.
It isn't. And I will say I've had more people come up to me and talk to me in the last couple of weeks and months about how they listen to the podcast, especially post our Safer visit that Adam and I had at the South Atlantic Fire Rescue Expo. And then even in our Leland class. In fact, I was recently in a visit out of town, and I had a group of firefighters, and I had a station captain who was like, hey, this is the guy that's on the podcast that I made you guys listen to. Like, as a company officer, he made his crew listen to an episode of our podcast. And I was like, how about that? Yeah. Like, I was blown away. Like, for a guy that doesn't shut up usually on the podcast, I didn't know what to say in that moment. I kind of had a little lump in my throat, and I was like, wow, how cool is that? That, we would be taken in that moment and said, let's listen and let's create the conversation. That is what our goal has always been, is to create conversations at the firehouse kitchen table, to take our conversation and do that. And so it's cool that that's happening. It's the whole point of the Cool Fireman Podcast, right?
I'm boggled every day, and I work on it every day, and I love it, and that's why I do it. And our social media has doubled, and our viewership has doubled, and it's just so fun and exciting. And it just takes time. It just takes time. And I've Googled, just like everybody else that started a podcast, they've Googled, how do you make a successful podcast? And it's just, all it is good content. It's number one, right? If you don't have content, people aren't going to listen. And then, try to make it look professional. And I think we do a pretty good job of that. And Riverside has helped us with that. And the audio, we send that through a Adobe Enhancer, and it's good stuff. So here we are, the Cool Fireman Podcast. So
speaking about, well, I was going to say, that was like, if you want to kind of piggyback one off the other, it's about, looking at your resources and making sure that those things are ready to go. I mean, when the podcast first started, when I first started listening, it was, 5 guys who wanted to get together and talk. And then as things got more serious, you guys got more serious about the podcast, right? It was about, just putting a platform together, and maybe not the best audio, but you guys have committed to that. And I think the fire service has done the same thing. We got called, we put fires out, but then we were like, wow, we got to take this more serious. So we started researching and developing and engineering better products, training, committing, post-critiquing. And I think in our chat, that was one of the things that we talked about, is resource allocation. And I think that would be a good topic to talk about tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I just finished my bachelor's degree in fire administration.
SMRT.
I just got my diploma in the mail today. And one of the classes was fire research. I don't know if that was the exact name of it, but and it was all about the importance of doing research and figuring out statistics and what people need. It's like, that is extremely important. It's like, well, why is it important? And we wrote papers about it and did all that kind of stuff. But you can't just willy nilly and just say, hey, this is what I want. Well, why? It's extremely important to, even if you have to pay a couple extra bucks, for a research
source.
What's the word I'm looking for?
Source.
Anyway,
Source.
I don't know.
What's that?
Well,
yeah.
I was gonna start it out like this and ask just kind of a basic question. How do we know on a career department, right? On a volunteer department, this is not a jab at volunteers on the onset. I'll get to that question here in a second. But I know Freddy's a union guy. Adam was a union guy. How do you know how many people by contract you want on first alarm assignments? Now, it's not necessarily your decision, but in your contract, that's how you make sure that you know that you have 4 people on a rig. But it goes deeper than that, right? You know, IAFF says we want 4 people on every rig, but how many rigs and what type of rigs do you want going to that fire?
State stuff.
So
we had a Republican governor that came in here and really decimated our state without going too deep on the politics, but he got rid of rig staffing. He got rid of minimum staffing. He got rid of non-compete clauses. So you can have you can have career firefighters working for part paid or volunteer departments in the state of Michigan now without it. Like, it's allowed. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to get trial boarded, but he went through and cut all of that.
Well, last time I checked, when people's houses are burning, they don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat. And that's not a jab, that's a reality. So they don't care. What they care is there enough firefighters coming? So what I'm asking is how does that fire chief, regardless of who's in office, make sure that on first alarm, they have X amount of people coming? So that resource allocation question that we talked about says, how do we do the research? And I think Matt had a very valid point. What research do we do? So that is situationally dependent, right? We have to look at the hazards in our first dues and say, how many people do we need on that fire? So if we have an industrial first due, it could be that in that first due area on those types of hazards, we're going to ask for, I don't know, 4 engines, 2 ladders, a battalion, or maybe 2 battalions, and 1 rescue on first alarm, because you know that on that scene you're going to need 50 firefighters on an industrial fire. But on a single family,
some of that's
you'll have 2 engines, a ladder, a rescue,
NIST
and a battalion.
Also, or where not responses, but you got to
responses,
put it all together. You know, fires are now hotter, and they're growing quicker. So our grandparents' furniture, our grandparents' houses would sit and smolder for 20, 30, 40 an hour before it would actually catch hold and you'd really have a big old fire, because it was made of your oaks and your cottons and, hardwoods and natural products. Now everything is synthetic and made from petroleum-based things, which is going to burn quicker and hotter. I don't know if anybody's seen the NIST videos where they are setting legacy furniture versus new age furniture on fire. And it's absolutely incredible how fast the new age or the modern furniture goes up. And I think to kind of tie that back around and, connect the dots is you have to be able to make an argument, I guess is the easiest way to say it, that we need 18 people on scene within 13 minutes or whatever the standard needs to be. There's people, I see the stickers, I see the posts all the time, defund the NFPA because people don't like it or whatever. But realistically, it makes me think of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, they're more like guidelines. You know what I'm saying? But whatever that is,
right? Yeah,
we have to try and use this new studies, these new figures that we have to try and fight for more personnel on scene. Be it, I work in a municipality that has 10 people on per day. We'll never hit that 18 standard because we don't have it. So now we have to rely on mutual aid. How far away is the mutual aid? Are they running their own calls? Right? Yeah. Are their trucks down? Are the this, that, and the other thing? Yep. So, in a perfect world, I know Big City Doug works in a city where he's got 20 stations, and he can, they can dump 5, 6, 7 different battalions or areas, and they can fill that scene. They can fill that.
Yeah.
But
Totally
the smaller
different.
municipalities
Totally
now,
different.
we're really
Yeah.
relying on each other. And I don't, and I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't know if that's a crutch or if that's more helpful, because now our city's going to stop allocating resources. Are they going to stop allocating resources? We don't need our ladder trucks is it's on its way out. It's 20 years old. We don't need to buy one because this city has one. This city has one. This city has one. Why do we need to buy one? We'll just call. Like, is that an appropriate allocation of resources? I don't think so.
I got like 3 thoughts, and I don't want to lose them real quick. So that you're good. So I want to do real quick NFPA. NFPA is made up of both public sector, private sector, and government. Okay, so it's like 3 different people. ERFs, effective response forces, are based off of what your agency does on critical task analysis. So how do you establish those? And those are the tasks that you as an agency establish. So those are situationally dependent. Number 3, the fire dynamics and the modeling of that. I'm gonna try to do this really fast because I know
they
Matt
were counting
and
your
Unky
P
both
things.
have something to say. Is they were counting my things? Oh, okay.
Just kidding. Now they weren't.
I'll slow down on this last
I'm
one.
joking.
The NFPA. Oh, okay. I don't know. There's so many words in my brain. So the fire development, I completely wholeheartedly agree. The fire investigator in me says, yes, 100%. You are exactly right. The variable that, and this is not a jab at your thought process, but what we have no control over on chief officers who establish our resource allocation is when the person calls and when we know that there's a fire. So we have to establish our ERF and our response protocol based off of what? A fully developed, blowing out every window type of fire, because we never know when that fire is going to fully develop or what level of information we're going to receive when we get a fire called into our PSAP. So what do I mean by that? Hey, there's a fire. How bad is it? I don't know. You don't level up or down based off of the intel on the person on the phone. You have a structure fire in a 1 and 2 family dwelling, you roll. Now, what you may variation off of is, I got a dumpster fire. I'm sending 1 unit non-emergent. I have a vehicle fire out in the middle of a parking lot. I'm rolling 1 unit. I have a structure fire in a home. It's a pot on the stove where it's blowing out every window and door. You're probably going to send the same amount because you have no control over how quickly that pot on the stove goes to a room and contents, or even the first floor is fully involved. Am I wrong in any one of those statements of how y'all dispatch units?
I would sure as hell hope so.
Ours is a little.
That's
ours
the way
is a
it
little.
works. Because
It depends on the number of calls and what the caller says.
Okay.
If it's an alarm, we're sending an engine and a rescue. If it's a smell of smoke, or if it's multiple calls saying they see smoke, they feel heat, something like that, then we call it a full response. And then if we get there,
you guys send 2 rigs to a fire alarm,
so we have 4 personnel on scene. Why?
I know certain agencies, Matt, who still send a full structural response. The first goes hot, the rest go non-emergent.
God, this is quite a topic for us because we send 1 engine on a fire alarm, and we roll code 2. Yep. And this has been a huge thing for the guys in my department, and I have to answer this question: is why do we get in full turnouts if we're rolling code
normal
2,
traffic.
which is for the people that are listening that don't know what code 2 is? No lights and sirens, right? Normal stop at the stop sign, stop at the red lights, and code 3 being lights and sirens. And so I get that question like, hey, Kat, why are we in full turnouts then if we're just going to go code 2? Like, if we're going to be in full turnouts, we should be going code 3, and we should get there as if there's something going on. Well, because 99.9% of the fire alarms that go off in our town are false alarms, and so we're not be ripping through town going code 3 for a fire alarm.
Well, and that was going to be the kind of the last point to point 3, which was risk, frequency, probability dictate our response protocol, right? Like how we have resource allocation. So as chiefs, we look at how often do we go, what type of incident is it, and how frequently are we going, because that's what drives how much we've had. So I think, Matt, you said it perfectly. In your community, 99% of the time, and I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong. That's not how it's done in my district. We're running 1 unit emergency traffic unless somebody calls in and said false alarm. Then we downgrade and we go non-emergency, but we still go and verify. And so I think that, again, it goes back to that resource allocation. And to Freddy's point about the ladder trucks, this is a totally different conversation. But when you look at it, and this is the chief talking in me, is you have one government dollar, right? So we sit in the meetings with the other department heads. And I was just talking to someone about this week. If you have one government dollar, and every government, every entity, we said, hey, I want a ladder in every district, right? Because we got to get a ladder there as quick as we can. And I need to staff it with 4 people on that thing. And so that way we can have it 4 on the engine, 4 on a ladder, and we're going to put a rescue in every district. I mean, our towns would go broke, right? Like, I mean,
Sure.
They would just go broke. So then we level it down. And if every town had a ladder, or every town had a hazmat team, and every town had a, whatever, you got to look at the frequency, the risk, and the probability. So maybe it's that if all 4 of us that are on this podcast tonight had our own districts, and we looked at the frequency, the risk, and the probability, and I said, hey, you know what? We're going to do hazmat. Matt, you've got a river, so you do water rescue. Adam, how about you do trench? Okay. And Freddy, how about you do high angle? All right. And so those specialties, why don't you guys be really good at that? Because even if we didn't, we couldn't afford it. So if we tried to all do a little bit of each one of those, none of us would be good at any of that. So if I have that type of incident, if I have a high angle, Adam, I'm going to call you, and I'm going to know a baseline, and I'm going to train with you, and I'm going to have my initial assessment, and I'm going to have some stuff to where I can assist you on that scene. But really, I'm not going to be ops. I'll be the IC, and I'll train, and I'll know you, and I'll train with you, but I'm not going to have that. Now, to Freddy's point about the ladders, that's a very fine line, because there's an ISO function to that, and insurance people, your consumers will pay for their policies based off of how covered that is. That's, again, a risk, frequency, probability. How do you make up for that? That's with staffing. You can make up for your ladder companies by having staffing. And ISO, back in my county fire marshal days, told us that you don't need a ladder if I can get 4 guys up inside of a building and putting the fire out, right? If they can get there quick and can staff it, that's a good way to offset it. A second engine company staffed in your station, you could pay for a lot of firefighters for a lot of years now with the cost of a ladder, to offset that. So I know that was a lot, but Freddy had a lot of good information there, and I wanted to make sure I kind of put it back out there. So Adam gave me 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
Adam, what you think about it? What do you think about resources? I mean, the feds are different. Y'all are like, hey, we play in our sandbox. Occasionally we come out. What do you think?
When we, my particular base, all fire alarms that come in, unless followed up by a phone call, you're getting both our engines. And if it's report of smells, you're getting our battalion. So you're getting 9 people if we're fully staffed that day. And if it's something like significant report, like, we can't see smoke, the ambulance will come, which is 2 more people. We're required to have, I think, 13 people on scene within 12 minutes for our ships. And you're going to get, if you're lucky, 11. So there's been times where we have rig issues and stuff like that. So, I mean, sometimes we're just in pickup trucks, but we just run codes and everything for, I don't know, for all our calls, unless they call us Like it was cooking in the room. Go ahead.
I got a question. I got a question for the group, for the whole group. So we've got, we just talked about how we respond and how we judge things. How do you assess risk in your department, like when you're doing pre-plans? So do you have, or do you know? That's, I don't want to try to trip you up, but here's the comment. Here's the question for everyone who's listening too, is how does your department, or how do you think your department assesses risk? So on your pre-plans, how do you identify target hazards in your community? Is it just by coffee table talk of saying, hey man, that would be really bad if our local hospital caught fire? Or our nursing home facility, places like that. I'll lead off kind of as a way to do that. We, being an accredited fire department, we use something called OVAP scoring. That was something called Occupancy Vulnerability Assessment Profile. And what that does is it basically looks at different functions of how things are in that occupancy. So in that nursing home, is it a sprinkled facility? How many people are there? How many beds does it have? Is it a 24-hour care facility? Is it an 8-hour care facility? Things like that. And all those numerical things that our firefighters literally just punch into their MDT, then spits it out for somebody at headquarters and says, all right, now tell me if this looks right. You put the information in to the system. Does this look right? And then we'll make decisions at a command staff level, and command staff usually being the battalion chiefs and the DC of ops, based off of what the firefighter put in, right? So that's something that they do, and then they'll adjust those response protocols based off of that. So what do y'all do? Somebody else just take lead.
Goodness. I wish I could phone a friend right now. I really wish I could phone a friend, because I just don't have enough information on what you're talking about. But I mean, as far as I know, or is we go off NFPA, and we don't even really meet the NFPA standard, to be honest. We're 3O staff. We got 3 guys on each engine, 4 stations, 12 guys on per day. And so as far as how we would do research and how we run calls, it's, I was just sitting here thinking, and I think we're 80, this is like our 80th episode. And I've thought about that. I don't feel like I've really done a good job on this podcast of bridging, because, what we started this podcast for is to start conversation for firefighters all across the country. Right. And how we do different things on the West Coast and the East Coast. And I really haven't done I don't really know if I've really done a good job at that, if you will, the bridging the East Coast to the West Coast and how we do things differently. And this is one of those things where, when you were talking, Brian, that's just not how we operate, and you were talking about how you guys would do research and community risk reduction and what you guys would look for. And it's like, well, hey, you have a stream, so you guys do swift water, we're just kind of do we have a big enough department, right? And the way that I look at it is the city, okay? So we have, I don't know how many cities that are in the county that I work for, right? There's a county fire department that has 100 and, gosh, I don't even know how many stations they have, but they encompass about 24, 25 cities. It's big. And we have our city, and then there's probably 7 other cities within Orange County that have their own municipal fire department. And so it's not it's if you're big enough, then you'll have certain resources. You know what I mean? I don't have a specific number for you, but we don't have hazmat. We're 4 stations. We're tiny. We're 3O staff, 12 guys on, 36 guys on the floor. That's it. That's all of us. We're not big enough. We got some fire investigators, but they're guys on the floor. We have a fire, and we'll pull guys off the floor the next day after the fire to investigate it, and we'll fill back. We don't have a fire investigator, bureau. You know what I mean? Our big brother is, if you will, the county. They got a whole bureau of them that are just civilian investigators.
But they're not coming. They're not coming into your city and doing target hazards.
It's interesting.
No,
They're
like
not. You mean like
plan
fires?
reviews or company walkthroughs or anything like that.
Oh, no.
Yeah, they're not
Right.
they're not
No,
doing
they're-
your pre-plans for you.
No. No, that's a whole nother discussion. And that's on the city to do that kind of stuff, to contract out, to do pre-plans. And couldn't tell you the last time we've done it. It's 10, 15,
Contract it
20.
out.
Yes. Yeah. A company
Why would-
that'll come in, and
A company.
we don't have resources to do that. Who's going
You
to do
don't. Who the firefighters do it.
it? Okay.
That's
That's just not in our culture, if you will. Right? We'll use the big C word.
okay.
But yes, is it important? Yes. Do we think it's important? Do
So
you know it's important?
do the Miami Dolphins write the Denver Broncos playbook?
No, it's two different teams. What are you talking about?
Okay, so why would you use somebody contracted to write your playbook?
Well, there's companies.
'Cause that's
out
what
there
a
that-
pre-plan
that's what
is. A
they- That's what
pre-plan-
they do.
But they're not on your team. It's your team. It's your strategies, your tactics. So a pre-incident plan should be the way that you functionally operate. Anybody can go down and write things in a check box and tell you the things that you need. The question is, what's the validity of a pre-plan if it doesn't functionally tell you how you would fight fire there?
Our pre-plan is going to tell us how big the structure is, where the hydrants are, where all the utility shutoffs are.
Then don't do it. Then I'm gonna stop you right there. Then don't do it, because what's the point of that information? Anybody can do a 360 and figure out how big a building is, where the water
I'm
shutoff
talking
is,
about
where the
like-
closest hydrant is.
Yeah,
That is, but that's the whole point of the playbook, and that's my harp as a prevention guy is what's the point of a pre-incident plan? It should be your playbook, right? It should not just be a bunch of check boxes that has information that on a 360 you as the incident commander can walk around and see.
All right, so
It's useless information. What's the point of knowing where the electric shutoff is when you can't see this far in front of your face?
Very briefly, Brian,
I'm very passionate about that.
Tell me what is on like you have a structure, whatever that structure is.
Yeah.
And it's a pre-plan. You guys actually have tactics and strategies that are written on that pre-plan?
Yes.
So we don't. Our pre-plans, we probably
And
have
that's-
probably have 30 of them, and they're mostly target hazards.
So we're talking
Right.
resource allocation tonight, right? Like that's the point of this podcast. And that's what I'm saying. The conversation and the mindset around pre-incident planning needs to change. What's the point of it? What's the point of that work? What's the point of paying a company to go get that information if you're not going to do anything with it?
I mean,
That's a waste of your government
to know where your gas shutoffs are, your electrical shutoffs are, where your
I can
hydrants
walk around
are,
a building and find that on my 360.
No, you can't. How long is it going to take?
My
you to do that
department's like
360?
Matt, but we have our own inspectors, and they come up with some paperwork, and it's on a computer drive that we'll never see. We'll see it 24 hours after the fire's out. Boom.
I go back and
so
say,
we can be
what's the
accredited.
point of doing it then?
So we can have another pin on our jacket
Okay.
for DoD. I would say
For
we
DoD,
like to look
yes.
like Korean
And for
generals,
folks that are-
or Korean generals.
Yes. I got you. And for a lot of departments, it's about ISO, but I'm a
with
big
you.
ROI guy, right? So if I can fill out, if I can put 4 more lines on that, and for the and I'm gonna go back to Freddy, right? If I'm waiting on somebody from another town that's coming 15 minutes away, what is the dynamics of fire behavior going to be in that 15 minutes while I'm waiting on that ladder truck? I made a tactical decision based off of a decision when I was first arriving, right? Now I got plenty of time to go around and close off the valve and do all these other things. But again, it goes back to there are so many different dynamics. These target hazards and stuff that are in our first due, we should be looking at them as saying, guys, we're going to plan as if this thing is blowing out every window and door. And what we're going to do is we're going to write a playbook where it says fully developed, right? Where are we staging? Where are we putting ladder placement? Put your playbook out there. That information I'm not saying is not valid, but it's only valid if you have additional things to go along with it. You got to think about, what am I going to do? That is your initial decision and your initial playbook information for that first arriving officer.
Let's say this. Okay. I agree with you. I agree with you. This is the first I've heard of this. I've been in the
Okay.
fire service for a long time, right? We call them special area maps.
Okay.
Area maps, all right? Not really necessarily like a pre-plan, but essentially the same thing. Okay, so let's say this: like, if the people that are listening to this and they're hearing us, we're very passionate about this. Like, I do this,
Yeah.
you do this. Okay, great. So, what is this a true bridge from East Coast to West Coast? Because maybe it's just something I'm not used to.
It is
maybe
not.
I'm
It is
crazy. Maybe even
It
the
is
county.
not popular. It's not popular here either. But I go back and say that's the mindset of what I'm trying to get people to understand, at least for my mindset. Again, I'm very passionate about it. What's the point of wasting tax dollars and your time? Because if because we do that at the engine company level, and I'm gonna put Freddy on the spot here. Okay. He sat back. Would you rather, as a guy who's passionate about training, would you rather be out there filling out a sheet of paper that's never going to be used, or would you rather be out training on stuff that you could tactically
Well, I mean,
use? Which would you rather do?
it's a
no-brainer, right?
He already
That's-
answered the question for you, Fred.
Yeah, I already answered the question for you because I already knew the answer.
Or turd
Because
sandwich.
So I'm saying that to say, if you have to go back to what Adam said, if you know you have to do it because of either accreditation or ISO, why not answer 2 to 3 more questions? So that way, if frequency, risk, probability, if in the event that it actually happens, you've got some initial tactics to your benefit. That's all I'm saying. Because you're going to be made to do it, right? The chief's going to make you do it. Somebody's going to do it. Or better yet, and Matt, I got to tell you, that is the first time I've ever heard of anybody being contracted to go do that work. Lord knows, if I was on the West Coast, Kelly FESC would be making bank because I'd sign up on that government
We've got
deal
ourselves
in
a new
heartbeat.
Brian Kelly
Bring it, baby.
business here. I'll go out and do all of your target hazards.
You better believe it. New business model right here. But it's one of those things where, again, what's the point of it? Because the firefighters, the knuckle dragon firefighters and the truckies would much rather be out training for something that could kill them, right? But if we just take that time to do the things that we're bound to do and put just a couple more things on it, then they will see the validity and the return on investment of it better than what they do now. I didn't say that they'll agree with it. I didn't say they'll be passionate about it. I didn't say they'd be happy about it. But what I do think is they would say, at least now, when it comes down to using it, it'd be something that I would actually maybe see some validity to it. And the only reason why I thought about this, and let me give you the example, because I get it. Matt and I've had this conversation when we were in Leland together. I'm a guy who rides around in a pickup truck, and I don't pull hose like I used to. But a captain is the one who said this to me. It changed my perspective. I had a station captain who said, Brian, do you ever ride around? He and I are best friends. He said, do you ever ride around and imagine stuff's on fire and what you would do? And I said, yeah,
Every day.
all the time. And he goes, okay, I just want to make sure I wasn't crazy. He said, because I'm scared to death that there's going to be a time when I don't get to see one of my guys leave the station one day. Meaning he's worried about being responsible for making sure that he sends everybody home. So again, if you're being made to go out and do pre-incident plans, whether you're career or volunteer, and you're the officer that's making sure that's getting done, put a couple more lines on a sheet of paper so that way you can make an initial tactical decision that helps make sure your crew goes home safely. That's all I'm saying.
Brian, there is not enough hours in the day. I'm going to tell you that right now. As a fire captain that sits on an engine, and I work 10 shifts a month, there is not enough hours in the day. We have probationary firefighters that we're training. We have mandatory training, EMS training that we have to do. We have other. I mean, I shouldn't say EMS training twice. That are in the number 2 priority because that's going to really piss some people off. It's just the one that came to my mind. We have calls that we got to run. We still got to eat dinner. I'm telling you, like, there is a ton of shit that we're doing throughout the day, right? From emails and responding. I mean, it's just insane, like the amount of stuff that we're doing, right? So break it all down. Let's break it all down. We're firemen and we just want to train all day. Awesome. Make like, how are you going to make it that way? You're going to make it that way by having a ton of overhead. That's just not going to happen. That's just not going to happen. And so
I go back and say,
we do fire inspections. And so we do fire inspections in our first in, all right. And I'm responsible for about 80 to 90 businesses, and we talk about tactics during that time. Like we'll get there, and
Is it written down?
No, it's not written down. No.
Okay. So for the other shifts that you have, the other 2 shifts, what benefit is that for those 80 properties?
Zero. Yeah. I mean, that's not to say that we're not going out on our own and walking businesses and doing that kind of stuff, because we'll do that kind of stuff. But hey, and that's when are you going to have time as an engine company captain? And please, if there's a captain out there that disagrees with what I'm saying right now, please let me know. But I'm telling you, we're at a fire within 3 minutes, right, of the bell going off. Bell goes off. We run downstairs, throw our bunkers on. I'm good to go. I'm reading the notes. I'm telling my engineer, hey, this is the way to go. Hey, you're going to find a hydrant on this corner. By that time, we're there. When do I have time to open the book? Fire blowing out of the house. You got a lady running up to me. She's saying, my child's in there. My husband's in there. My dog, my lizard, right? Hold on, lady. I got to read my map real quick. I got to figure out how I'm going to put this fire out. And not to mention, and on a big building, right? It's dynamic, right? How are you going to say that a fire that starts in the Bravo Charlie corner is the same that's going to start in the Charlie Delta corner?
I think you're missing my conversational mark by a mile.
I think that a special area map or a pre-plan can give us a general guideline as to how many, especially in my town, we have a lot of descending hillside homes because we have a lot of cliffs in Laguna. And so, those are tough, right? And so how many, if we have a hotel that's, down a cliff, literally we walk into the Surf and Sand Hotel, you're on the fifth floor. And then there's 4 floors down and 4 floors up. So just to know that, obviously that's local knowledge. We know that kind of stuff, but to have that on a pre-plan and open that is valuable. But how do we have much more time than that to read some tactics that we're going to go over? We should know if we're on a commercial structure that's 4 stories, we're going to use Al's base. For us, I don't know what you guys use on the East Coast or the North, but we use attack, lobby, and then we create a base for our staging and then base. And we have a method for that. And if we go into a 2-story home, a 3-story home, we have tactics for that. If we have a 2-story strip mall, commercial strip mall, we have a tactic for that. Division it out. It's at the end of the day, like I tell this to my guys, and I don't want to demean anything that you've said, Brian. I'm not doing that right now at all. I tell my guys, especially the new guys, I have a probationary fireman right now. I said, our job is easy. We're a blue collar job. We work our ass off. We carry heavy shit, but at the end of the day, we take water and we put it through hoses, and then we spray that water on fire and we put the fire out, and then we go home, right? Super easy. Very easy. But there are complex incidents, like you're saying, that would help to have a pre-plan. I totally get it. But I just don't think that it is logical. I just don't think that it would be feasible, like to have something that I'm going to have to sit there and read after I've already had to tell my engineer how to get there and where the hydrant is and trying to figure out where I'm going to park, make sure I have room for the truck, all this kind of stuff. And then I'm sitting here reading tactics about what I'm going to do. It's like,
I'm not looking for a novel. For me, I'm not looking for a novel. I'm looking for top 3 strategies and or tactical considerations for the target hazards in our first dues, not our most commons, not your single family homes, not, that kind of stuff. You should, like you said, you should know those like the back of your hand, right?
You should know all of them like the back of your hand.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying for the folks that are listening, you should know those, right? You should know those. You should know them like the back of your hand for your first due. You should have a good understanding of those in your second due, that kind of stuff. What I was looking at was for those target hazards. If you could just do that for your target hazards, your highest risk to life and property. And when I mean life, I'm not just talking about for the people that are in it. I'm talking about to your firefighters, ones involving hazmat, whether it be institutional, whatever. Those are key things because it can be very, very problematic. And again, I get it. I had an inspection I was on today. The guy was like, yeah, I told the guy the other day to come over here. I was like, I didn't have time. I'm sorry. I came by your place of business and I didn't have time because I was running late. So I get it. In the world of fire service, everybody, in the world of public service, we're all extremely taxed. But what I identify, and the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because in my world of prevention, I work very hard to save not only the public's life, but the firefighters' lives. I want to make sure that you guys go home every day. And so I get very passionate about it because if I see something as simple of knowing fire behavior and dynamics, just like Freddy said, man, he said, man, the way that fire behaves, it's like, man, does it matter that we know where that electrical shutoff is inside of the building? It's not as important to that as to know what the chemicals are in there, because that chemical can blow up in their face well before they ever made it to the electrical shutoff inside the building. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And it's going to be a cinder block building that they're going to walk right past the placard because of what it was. And I mean, and it could be just a regular department store. So it's one of those things where I agree 110%. The fire service as a whole is extremely taxed. Call volume is going up, right? Fire incidences are going down as far as the frequency of them. So it's harder to stay trained up on a skill and a craft that is more dangerous than it was all the years ago when we had a higher volume of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's our frequency has gone down, but our risk has gone up because of, like Freddy said, the things that are in it are more dangerous than when we had a lot of fires. And so when you take out the frequency of it, it becomes even more dangerous to us. And so then when you mix that in with just the amount of call volume, it makes it hard to be on tap with that. So I think this has been a great podcast and topic. Freddy, you were listening intently. Did you want to add anything in before we close out? I know we could talk about this for days. We could have done a part 2 and a part 3 on this.
Well, yeah. I mean, we got into resource allocation, but another thing that I was going to bring up real quick was, sorry, Freddie, I just totally jacked you.
Wow, ran right over him.
Is knowing what your resources are capable of, and if you run a TC into a building, what resources do you need to request? Like, hey, stand by for a resource request. And you're like, oh shit, what do I gotta request? Like what who could do what? Who can do shoring? But anyway, that's a big topic too. But what do you got, Fred? Sorry,
there's quite a few things I just wanted to touch on. My first department that I worked for didn't have a fire marshal. The lieutenants would go out. They were responsible for a binder's worth of businesses, and they would do inspections. And to be frank, they hated it. It was not what they signed up for. It was, hey, get your stuff done or you're getting written up. So a lot of times when we would do those inspections, they'd walk through and be like, yeah, looks great. And then the chief added a software where you actually had to go through and place air conditioning units and place water shutoffs and place gas shutoffs and stuff like that. And I'm sure you could guess that now when the lieutenant went to do those, guess who had the iPad? The firefighter that was with them, and they were placing all the things. And so it was something that I just remember when they had the paper ones thinking, these inspections that we do at this department are in a file cabinet in the assistant chief's office. If we catch a call at 2 a.m, we're not, is it in binder 32 or 36? That's not happening. So then we got the software, useless. And then the software is garbage completely in, garbage useless. Out, right? If the person that's doing it doesn't care, then what's the point? So my new department, we have a fire marshal. We've got 6 or 7. Well, we've got 6 or 7. Maybe we might even have more. And fire inspectors. They're 24-hour guys. They're shift guys. They go out and do inspections when they're on shift, and I think it's better. I'm positive that it's better. We do a lot of company inspections. When we have new target hazards, a lot of times we'll go into the conference room, the training room, what have you, and we'll put it up, Google image on the screen, and we'll kind of go over it. We'll do a street view. We'll look at it. If the fire marshal or fire inspector has any pictures, we can review them. So we kind of do company stuff, Unky. I think it's better. The only problem, I guess, that I run into with all of this is that we're doers. We're doers. And a lot of my officers are doers. So for them to be able to consciously stop, grab the iPad, type in the address, click the little tabs, go through, and do stuff like that, I think is a lot, and it's going to take a lot of training or culture change, Matt, right? It's going to change, and maybe without trying to tell your department what to do, is maybe that is what your department needs, is a tiny bit of a, hey, we should probably review some of these and talk about tactics. I don't know, but I think it's only as good as what we put in, and then honestly what we try and take out of it. And then the only other thing that I'll say for asset allocation or whatever we want to talk about is, when we first said this, my mind kind of went two places, and it was vehicles and it was personnel. And we kind of hammered the vehicle side of it, I think. But personnel, to me, is as important or more, because a good manager, a good leader, a good officer knows the strengths and weaknesses of the men or women who are working underneath them. So I know I'm not going to send Joe Schmo on the roof to do vertical ventilation, because every time I've seen him throw a ladder, he throws it past the house or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Or if we have, a trench rescue and we can't get the Oakway, which is a bunch of the communities are together for us. A bunch of communities share resources for tech teams. But if we can't get them out there in a timely fashion, I know I'm not going to send somebody who's claustrophobic to go and get that person or what have you. So I think knowing your people, knowing their strengths, is a huge for asset allocation. Personally, that's I think.
Well, according to Jeremy at NFR, those are the called losers.
I want to go back real quick.
Maybe I
you
missed
see that video.
Yes, but he called the losers people that really don't want to be there, don't want to do nothing.
Yeah.
And I get it.
I understand that.
I mean,
it came off.
You're going to use a negative name calling for those people.
I'm going to do anything you tell me to do, or that I'm assigned.
I want to go back,
but I know that I have more strengths and more weaknesses than other members of the department. Does that make sense? We've got 24-year-old dudes who are like heavy lifters. They are super strong. Like, they could probably lift up a Tesla by themselves. I'm not at that point in my life anymore. Like, I don't lift heavy. I do a lot of functional training. So if it's something that heavy lifting, we've got a couple of guys on our unit. Hey, you and you, go lift that.
I want to chime in on two things that you said, and I think that they are very, very good things. When you talk about people, I think that speaks to the OVAP scoring and everything else. So your capabilities will tell you what kind of not only vehicles you need, but the type of manpower that you need for that ERF, effective response force. So I think that was pretty cool. As far as the integration, the technology piece of that, I think that's a very valid point. And I think at our geeky level, at the chief's level, we understand that. When you, like with Matt, what he said, I'm on scene within 3 minutes. There's no way that I have that kind of time. That's something that I have been asking for a long time. If you can watch your Domino's pizza be tracked to your house, right, from the time you order it on your app Why can we not, in a 911 system, when someone, as soon as they say 911, what's the address of your emergency? If it's not a commercial building, can that pre-plan or that address be queried in your electronic database and be on your MDT by the time you get to your truck? Why can it not? Why can it not be linked? It can.
Yeah.
The question is, can municipalities and agencies be willing to pay for that? And if they can't, then it's not a priority for them. And that's a fact, and that's a fact that's not fair. So if we're willing to pay for it, and if the industry demands it enough, then we will. So as chief officers, and I'm calling out the other chiefs, the other white shirt mafia members, you need to make it a priority for your agency so that way you can empower the people that are in the right seat to have the information they need for making those decisions. Because just like Matt said, they don't have the time. They don't have the time to make for that. So they need to go do it. And it's not at the cost of something else in their budget. Okay? They need to go ask for that.
Hey, I got a question real quick. So, and again, this is not to undermine anybody. But it's is this a problem?
I think it is. And I'm just saying from me, because again, it's a waste of time if we're going out in pre-incident planning and we're not using the information we're collecting.
I'm all for research. I'm all for progression, right? I mean, we used to have the bucket brigade, right? I mean, and then we used horses to pull our freaking pumpers. And then, then we had open cab fire engines. And now we have what we have today, which is insane. And that's all due to history and stats and research and all this good stuff. And obviously like innovation. They've made, shoot, who knows? We might all have electric fire engines in like 10 years. That'd be pretty stupid. But if we do, great, wonderful. It's progression, I guess. But my question is, like, we've been fighting fire for hundreds of years. It's like, is it really like, do we really need to be reading a pre-plan on the way to a fire? I don't know. Do we?
So I go back and say, and this innovation, it's on one of our topics to discuss, but there's technology out there that through past system integrations, your PAR checks are going to go away because they're going to be integrated with Bluetooth, and at the command post you'll be able to see where every air pack is. And as long as you're wearing your air pack, you'll have a virtual map to be able to see it. The technology's already there. So again, I go back and say, if we have time to look at that level of information, why would we not collect that data now? So I can say, I'm going to pick on Freddy again because I'm looking at him on the screen. If he's my Unit 3, I could say, Unit 3, you're right near the gas shutoff. Go turn that off on the gas valve, please. But I've got it. If I can overlay the information on the pre-incident plan, then I can make a tactical decision using the technology that I have available to me. But if I don't have the information, how many years is it going to take to
put a
overlay the technologies together?
Just for that here.
So
here's what I think.
Yes, please, because we could go forever. Yeah.
If you are responding to calls with a minimal personnel, minimal staff, Matt, I think you're correct. I think it's impossible we are also a 3-minute response time where I work. It's impossible to get all the tasks necessary on a fire scene in that first 10 minutes done while you have one person, ideally the officer in charge who has other things that they should be doing or monitoring, staring at bejeweled on the iPad. If you get what I'm saying, just their faces in a device. Now, battalion chiefs or district chiefs or whatever. If our fire marshal is working, if it's during the day and he's there, he shows up to all fires just kind of for that reason, because now he's an asset, a non-firefighting asset to the OIC, whether he's doing constant 360s, whether he's pulling up those targets, whatever he's doing. If we're able to push our fire departments to increase staffing so that we can utilize this technology that is making our jobs easier, safer, and more efficient, then I think that's where this needs to go. That's why it's
I think
easy to
everybody
say.
knows.
Y'all
agree with
lucky
that,
y'all
Fred.
have computers. We're not allowed to turn the Bluetooth on our G1s.
Adam's
He's
got
got
a
a
yellow
stone
legal
tablet.
pad on his
Yeah.
engine.
All right. Let's wrap this thing up.
Man, this was good. This
Yes,
was good.
I agree. It was a little scatterbrained, but that's okay. We were kind of all over the place. But I think that the people that were listening kind of got the gist of, where we're going with each topic. But I don't know. I thought
like
the
I'm
same
at the
thing.
kitchen
I
table.
thought it was a good discussion.
Exactly. There you go. I love it. And that was the whole point. That's why we are who we are.
Hey, before we finish, though, we got to do a moment of silence.
Definitely.
I don't have
100%.
anything in particular, but we're doing a moment of silence for all of our brothers and sisters.
You got it, buddy.
Okay, well said.
Amen.
Hey, boys, I love you all. Great discussion. I know we got a little passionate, but
love you guys too.
That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. So
if we didn't have passion, we don't
Happy
need to be in service, right?
hell yeah. So
That's what it's all about.
It was fun.
happy. Yeah, this will be posting the day after. So I hope you got enough candy to rot your teeth.
Yeah. Hey, part-time guy. Oh no, you changed it. Happy to be here.
Yes,
I got to do it
I've had
in honor
here,
of
by the way.
Gigi.
But during the middle of the show, it said it was your mom's favorite.
That was my favorite one that you put up there.
Roll it, Gigi.
Roll it, Gigi.
Before you leave, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and give these firemen a huge thumbs up. Also, make sure you check out thecoolfireman.com for more. Thanks!